The rain hammered down on Chicago streets, turning the city into a blur of lights and shadows. Jade Thompson stood alone in front of her company's headquarters, her heart pounding in her chest. The building, a sleek tower of glass and steel, seemed to mock her with its indifference. Its glowing lights a cruel reminder of everything she'd built, now slipping through her fingers. She stepped forward, her heels clicking defiantly on the wet pavement. The security guard, a burly man named Tom, blocked the entrance, his broad frame filling the doorway. His face was a mask of discomfort, but his stance was unyielding. "Miss Thompson, I'm sorry, but I've been instructed not to let you in," he said, his eyes darting away from hers. Jade's gaze sharpened, cutting through the rain like a blade. "Instructed by whom, Tom? This is my company." Tom shifted his weight, the unease rolling off him in waves. "By the board, ma'am. They said, you're no longer the CEO." The words slammed into her, a sucker punch to the soul. No longer the CEO. Her mind reeled. She'd clawed her way up from nothing, born in a crumbling Detroit neighborhood where dreams were a luxury few could afford. She'd turned her pain into power, building Thompson Security Inc. from a one-room office to a titan of industry. And now, the board, her own board, had stabbed her in the back. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a steely whisper. "Tom, look at me. You know me. You know I've poured my life into this place, fought for every inch of it. Are you really going to stand there and let them erase me?" Tom's jaw tightened, his loyalty caught in the vice. For a moment she thought he might waver, but then he shook his head, slow and resolute. "I'm sorry, Miss Thompson. I have my orders." The rejection burned, but Jade swallowed it down. She wasn't about to break, not here, not now. She was Jade Thompson, a woman forged in fire, and she didn't beg. She turned sharply, her soaked coat flapping against her legs as she strode back into the rain. At the curb she paused, glancing over her shoulder at the towering headquarters one last time. "This isn't over," she vowed, her words a quiet thunder against the storm. "I'll be back, and when I am, they'll regret the day they thought they could bury me."
Jade Thompson drove through the rain-soaked streets of Chicago, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The city skyline loomed behind her, a jagged silhouette against the stormy sky. But her mind was elsewhere, back in the crumbling streets of Detroit, where she'd learned to survive long before she learned to lead. She was 7 when her father, a factory worker with calloused hands and a quiet pride, sat her down at their rickety kitchen table. "Jade, the world ain't kind to folks like us," he'd said, his voice steady despite the eviction notice crumpled in his pocket. "But you're tougher than they'll ever know. Don't let 'em tell you what you can't do." Her mother, a seamstress who worked nights to keep the lights on, would nod silently, her tired eyes full of unspoken dreams for her daughter. That table was where Jade's fire was born. Growing up in a neighborhood where gunshots were lullabies and hope was a scarce commodity, she learned early that survival meant outsmarting the odds. School was her escape, a place where her quick mind and fierce determination caught the eye of a teacher who pushed her to apply for scholarships. By 18, she'd traded Detroit's despair for a Marine Corps uniform, trading one battlefield for another. The Marines shaped her. 4 years in, she was a decorated sergeant, her sharpshooting skills and cool-headedness under pressure, earning her respect in a world that rarely gave it to a black woman. It was there she met Alex Carter, a wiry, quick-talking soldier who became her brother in arms. Alex, with his infectious laugh and unshakable loyalty, was the one who pulled her through the darkest nights when the weight of war and prejudice threatened to break her. After her service, Jade returned to a civilian world that felt alien. Jobs were scarce, and the ones available paid pennies for her skills. So she built her own path. With a small loan and a battered laptop, she started Thompson Security Inc. in a one-room office above a laundromat. Her first clients were small businesses in underserved neighborhoods, places the big firms ignored. Jade understood their fear, their need for protection. She poured her heart into every contract, every late-night strategy session, until her reputation grew.
10 years later, Thompson Security was a powerhouse, its contracts spanning from local shops to Fortune 500 companies. Jade was a symbol of what was possible, a black woman from nothing who'd built an empire on grit and vision. But success came with shadows. The board she had assembled, men and women she'd trusted to help her scale, was led by Marcus Reed, her right-hand man. Marcus, with his sharp suits and sharper ambition, had been with her from the early days. He was charming, brilliant, and, she'd thought, loyal. What Jade didn't know, couldn't know, was the secret that bound them closer than she ever imagined. Marcus was her half-brother, a truth her father had taken to his grave. Raised in foster care, Marcus had clawed his way up too, but his resentment toward Jade, the sister who'd made it, had festered in silence. He hid it well, smiling through board meetings, toasting her at galas. But tonight, as Jade pulled into her apartment garage, the weight of his betrayal was about to crash down. She stepped out of her car, the rain still clinging to her coat, and checked her phone. A single text from Alex glowed on the screen. "Call me. Something's off with Marcus." Her stomach twisted. She dialed, but the call went to voicemail. Standing in the dim garage, Jade felt the first crack in the foundation she'd built. Whatever was coming, she knew one thing. She'd fight for what was hers, just like she always had. Jade Thompson sat in her darkened apartment, the Chicago skyline glittering coldly through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The rain had stopped, but the chill lingered in her bones. Her phone lay on the coffee table, Alex's unanswered text staring back at her like an accusation. Something's off with Marcus. The words gnawed at her, a warning she should have seen coming. She poured a glass of bourbon, the amber liquid catching the dim light, and sank into her couch. Her mind raced back to the early days with Marcus Reed. He'd been a nobody when they met, a slick-talking MBA dropout, scraping by on consulting gigs. Jade had seen his potential, his hunger. She'd brought him into Thompson Security, Inc., mentored him, trusted him. Hell, she made him her right-hand man. And now he'd orchestrated her ousting? It didn't add up. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Sarah, her CFO, her voice tight with urgency. "Jade, you need to check your email. The board sent out a memo. They're claiming you misappropriated funds, millions. They've frozen your access to company accounts." Jade's grip on the glass tightened, her knuckles paling. "Misappropriated funds? Sarah, you know me. I've never taken a dime that wasn't mine." "I know," Sarah said, her voice cracking, "but the evidence they're circulating, it looks bad. Emails, bank transfers, all with your digital signature. The staff's freaking out. Clients are calling to pull contracts." Jade set the glass down, her pulse hammering. Evidence. Forged, no doubt, but convincing enough to turn her own people against her. She opened her laptop, her fingers trembling as she logged into her personal email. The board's memo was there, cold and clinical, accusing her of embezzlement and announcing her immediate termination as CEO. The final blow? Marcus Reed was named interim CEO. Her breath caught. Marcus. The man she treated like family. The man who she now realized was her half-brother all along, a secret her father had hidden, revealed only in a letter she'd found after his death 2 years ago. She'd kept it to herself, unsure how to bridge the gap with a man who didn't know they shared blood. Now that blood felt like poison. She stood, pacing the room, her reflection a ghost in the windows. The betrayal cut deeper than the lies. Marcus wasn't just stealing her company, he was dismantling her legacy, the one she'd built for kids like her, for communities like the one she'd clawed her way out of. Thompson Security wasn't just a business, it was a promise to protect those the world overlooked. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Thompson Security CEO accused of embezzlement, removed from post. The story was already trending on X. Hashtags like #JadeThompsonScandal spreading like wildfire. She scrolled through the posts, her stomach churning. Employees she'd mentored were questioning her. Clients she'd fought for were jumping ship. And somewhere, Marcus was watching it all burn. Jade's fists clenched. She could run, take the hit, start over somewhere else. It'd be easier, safer. But running wasn't in her blood. She'd faced worse odds in Detroit, in the Marines, in boardrooms where she was the only black woman at the table. She wasn't about to let Marcus, or anyone, erase her. She grabbed her phone and texted Alex, "Meet me tomorrow. We're fighting back." As she hit send, a fire reignited in her chest. Marcus thought he'd won, but he'd forgotten who taught him how to play the game. Jade Thompson wasn't done, not by a long shot.
The morning sun sliced through the blinds of a dingy diner on Chicago's south side, casting stripes of light across the scratched Formica table. Jade Thompson sat in a corner booth, her coffee untouched, her eyes scanning the room. The place smelled of grease and nostalgia, a haven for truckers and locals who didn't care about trending hashtags or corporate coups. It was the perfect spot to plan a war. Alex Carter slid into the booth across from her, his leather jacket creaking. His usual grin was gone, replaced by a tightness around his eyes. "You look like hell, Jade," he said, cutting straight to it. "What's the play?" Jade leaned forward, her voice low. "We're taking back the company. Marcus set me up, forged documents, fake transfers. The board's eating it up, but I know he's got something on them. We find proof, we expose him." Alex nodded, but his jaw twitched. "You sure about this? The whole city's talking. X is tearing you apart. If we screw this up, it's not just your name that tanks." Jade's gaze hardened. "I didn't build Thompson Security to let my half-brother burn it down. You're in or out, Alex." He held her stare, then sighed. "You know I'm in. Always am. But we need a team, people we trust." By noon, they'd gathered their crew in a cramped safe house Jade kept for emergencies, a nondescript apartment above a pawn shop. There was Lena, a wiry ex-Marine with a knack for surveillance, Tariq, a hacker who'd once worked for the NSA, and Sarah, the CFO, who'd snuck out of the office with a hard drive of financial records. 5 people against a corporate empire. The odds were lousy, but Jade had faced worse. She stood at the head of the room, her presence commanding, despite the weight of the past 24 hours. She said, "Marcus thinks he's untouchable. He's wrong. We hit the company servers, pull every email, every transaction. We find the truth, we take him down."
Tariq raised a hand, his brow furrowed. "Jade, those servers are Fort Knox. Even if we get in, Marcus has the board locked down. They're not going to flip just because we wave some emails." "Then we go public," Jade shot back. "The clients, the staff, they deserve to know who they're dealing with. This isn't just about me. It's about every person we promised to protect." Lena leaned back, arms crossed. "And what if we fail? You're radioactive right now. If we get caught, we're done. Careers, reputations, all of it. I got a kid to think about." The room went quiet. Jade felt the doubt creeping in, like a fog rolling off Lake Michigan. She'd always been the one with the answers, the one who kept the team steady. But now, with Marcus's betrayal, her own brother's betrayal, cutting deeper than she'd admit, she wavered. Was she asking too much, dragging them into a fight they couldn't win? Sarah broke the silence, her voice soft but firm. "Jade, I've seen what you've done for people like me, people who never got a shot. You gave me a seat at the table when no one else would. If you're fighting, I'm fighting." Jade met Sarah's eyes, a flicker of gratitude steadying her. She turned to Lena. "I hear you, Lena. I do. But if we don't stop Marcus, he won't just ruin me. He'll gut everything we've built. Your kid deserves a future where people like us don't get stepped on." Lena hesitated, then nodded slowly. Tariq shrugged. "Guess I'm not cut out for a desk job anyway." Alex clapped his hands, breaking the tension. "All right, team. Let's make this bastard regret crossing us." Jade forced a smile, but her chest tightened. She was asking them to risk everything, and the weight of that trust was heavier than ever. As the team dispersed to prep, Alex lingered, his voice low. "Jade, I know about Marcus, about you two. You okay?" She froze, her breath catching. She hadn't told anyone about Marcus being her half-brother, but Alex had always seen through her walls. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice brittle. "He's just another enemy now." Alex didn't push, but his eyes said he wasn't buying it. As he left, Jade stood alone in the safe house, the photo of Marcus staring back at her. She'd built her life on trust. Trust in her team, her vision, her own strength. But Marcus had shattered that, and now she had to wonder, could she trust herself to lead them through this storm? The safe house was a hive of controlled chaos, lit by the blue glow of laptops and the flicker of a single overhead bulb. Jade Thompson stood over Tariq's shoulder, her arms crossed, watching lines of code scroll across his screen. The air was thick with tension. Lena was rigging surveillance gear, Sarah was poring over financial records, and Alex was pacing, his boots scuffing the worn floorboards. They were close to cracking Marcus's scheme, but the clock was ticking.
Got something, Tariq said, his voice cutting through the hum of activity. He leaned back, pointing at a string of encrypted emails he'd just pulled from a back door in Thompson Security's servers. These aren't your standard boardroom memos. They're heavy. Jade's eyes narrowed as she scanned the screen. The emails were between Marcus and an unknown contact, coded with aliases but sloppy enough to trace. Payments, hundreds of thousands, funneled through offshore accounts, not just to Marcus, but to 2 board members who'd backed his coup. The subject lines read like a hit list: "Neutralize Thompson, clear the path." Her stomach churned. This wasn't just about her ousting. Marcus wasn't playing for control of the company. He was dismantling it from the inside. But why? She'd mentored him, trusted him, even grappled with the secret that he was her half-brother. What drove him to this? "Keep digging," she told Tariq, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "I need to know who's pulling his strings." An hour later, Tariq's screen froze on a single file, its encryption tougher than anything he'd seen. "This one's a beast," he muttered, cracking his knuckles. "Give me 10 minutes. 9 minutes later, he let out a low whistle. "Jade, you're gonna want to see this." The file opened to a contract, stamped with a logo Jade didn't recognize, a stylized serpent coiled around a dagger. The terms were chilling. Marcus had agreed to sabotage Thompson Security's proprietary tech, AI-driven surveillance systems that protected vulnerable communities, and hand it over to a third party. In exchange, he'd get a cut of a multi-million-dollar deal. The third party? A shell company linked to a Chicago crime syndicate with a history of exploiting the same neighborhoods Jade had sworn to protect.
Jade's blood ran cold. This was bigger than betrayal. Marcus wasn't just stealing her company. He was selling out the people she'd built it for. Schools in Inglewood, clinics in Austin, small businesses that relied on her tech to stay safe. All of it traded for a payout. But the real gut punch came at the bottom of the contract. A handwritten note scanned into the file in Marcus's unmistakable scrawl. She had her chance. Time for me to take what's mine. Blood don't mean loyalty. Jade staggered back, her breath shallow. Marcus knew. He knew they were siblings. He'd known all along. And still, he'd chosen to destroy her. The secret she'd carried, the guilt over not reaching out to him sooner, shattered like glass. Her half-brother wasn't just her enemy. He was a stranger who'd weaponized their shared blood. Alex caught her arm, steadying her. "Jade, talk to me. What's in that file?" She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "He's not just after the company. He's working with the mob to gut our tech, sell it to the highest bidder. And he knows. He knows we're family." The room went silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Lena's hands froze on her gear. Sarah's pen dropped. Tariq pushed his glasses up, staring at the screen like it might explain the madness. Alex's jaw tightened. That son of a... "Jade, what's the move?" She straightened, forcing the pain down, locking it away like she'd done in the Marines. "We don't just expose him, we burn his whole operation to the ground. Every deal, every contact, every dirty dollar. He wants a war? He's got one." But as she spoke, a new fear clawed at her. Marcus wasn't acting alone, and the syndicate he'd aligned with didn't play by boardroom rules. They were outgunned, outmanned, and diving into a fight that could cost them more than their careers. Jade glanced at her team, their faces etched with determination, and wondered if she was leading them to victory or to their graves.
The night was a shroud over Chicago, the city's pulse muted under a moonless sky. Jade Thompson crouched in an alley behind Thompson Security's headquarters, her breath fogging in the frigid air. Her team was in position. Lena on overwatch across the street, Tariq ready to loop the security cameras, Sarah and Alex at her side. The plan was simple: slip into the server room, download the syndicate's contract, and get out before Marcus's goons noticed. Simple, but nothing about this felt right. "Cameras down in 3, 2, 1, Tariq's voice crackled through her earpiece. Jade nodded to Alex, and they moved, shadows slicing through the darkness. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of what she learned. Marcus, her half-brother, wasn't just betraying her, he was selling out entire communities for profit. The thought fueled her, but it also tore at her. How would she miss his hatred, his resentment, all these years? They reached the service entrance. Jade's fingers danced over the keypad, entering a backdoor code she'd installed years ago.
The lock clicked open and they slipped in, the hum of the building systems greeting them. The server room was 2 floors down, a fortress of steel and code. If they pulled this off, they'd have the evidence to bury Marcus and his syndicate allies. But fate had other plans. Halfway down the stairwell, a flashlight beam sliced through the dark, pinning them in place. "Freeze!" a voice barked. Jade's stomach dropped as 3 security guards, hired muscle, not her usual team, emerged from the shadows, guns drawn. One of them, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, smirked. "Didn't think you'd be dumb enough to show up, Thompson." Jade's mind raced. "Tariq, status," she hissed into her comms. Silence. Her earpiece was dead, jammed. She glanced at Alexis, his jaw tight, hands raised. Sarah's face was pale, her breath hitching. They were trapped. "Marcus said you might try something stupid," Scarface said, stepping closer. "Told us to bring you in. Or not." His words. His grin widened, and Jade knew what that meant. These weren't guards. They were syndicate enforcers. Before she could react, the stairwell door above slammed open. Lena's voice shouted, "Jade, run!" followed by the crack of gunfire. Chaos erupted. Alex tackled Sarah to the ground as Jade dove for cover, her marine instincts kicking in. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, sparks flying. Lena's rifle barked from above, buying them seconds, but it wasn't enough. Scarface lunged, his fist connecting with Jade's jaw. Pain exploded, stars dancing in her vision. She hit the ground hard, her gun skittering across the concrete. He loomed over her, his boot raised to crush her. "You should have stayed gone," he snarled.
But Jade wasn't done. She rolled, grabbing his ankle and twisting with all her strength. He yelped, crashing down. She scrambled to her feet, grabbing her gun, but another guard tackled her from behind, pinning her arms. Alex fought to reach her, but a third guard clubbed him with a pistol, dropping him to his knees. "Enough!" Scarface roared, back on his feet. He grabbed Jade's hair, yanking her head back. "You're coming with us. The rest, well, Marcus don't need him." Jade's heart shattered. Her team, her family, was bleeding out because of her. She led them into a trap, underestimated Marcus's reach, the safe house breach, the jammed comms. It all pointed to a mole. Someone had sold them out. They dragged her to a black van outside, her wrists zip-tied, her jaw throbbing. Alex and Sarah were shoved in beside her, bloodied but alive. Lena's gunfire had stopped, and Jade's gut twisted at the silence. Tariq was nowhere to be seen. The van's doors slammed shut, plunging them into darkness. Hours later, Jade sat in a dank holding cell, the smell of mildew and despair thick in the air. Her hands were cuffed to a metal table, her body bruised, her spirit teetering on the edge. A single bulb buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. Marcus had won. Her company, her legacy, her team, all crumbling because she'd trusted the wrong person, because she'd believed blood meant something. The door creaked open, and Alex was pushed inside, his face swollen, one eye nearly shut. He slumped into a chair across from her, his voice a rasp. "Jade, Lena's gone. They got her." The words were a knife to her chest. Lena, with her fierce loyalty, her daughter waiting at home. She was dead because of Jade's plan. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back. She couldn't break, not in front of Alex, not when he was still fighting. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I should have seen this coming." Alex shook his head, pain etched into every line of his face. "This ain't on you. Marcus did this. But Jade, we're out of moves." She stared at the table, her father's words echoing in her mind. "You're tougher than they'll ever know." But was she? She'd built an empire to protect people like her, like Lena's kid, like the communities Marcus was now betraying. And she'd failed them all. Yet, in that moment of despair, a spark flickered. She thought of her parents, working themselves to the bone for her future, of the kids in Detroit who looked at her like she was proof dreams could survive. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for them. Jade lifted her head, meeting Alex's gaze. "We're not done," she said, her voice low but resolute.
The warehouse was a tomb of shadows, its rusted beams groaning under the weight of Chicago's relentless night. Jade Thompson crouched behind a stack of crates, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her wrists still ached from the zip ties, her jaw throbbed from the fight, but her eyes burned with a fire no cell could extinguish. Alex and Sarah flanked her, their faces grim but resolute. Tariq was alive, barely, huddled in a corner, his laptop glowing like a beacon. They'd escaped the syndicate's holding cell, thanks to a sympathetic guard, but Lena's death hung over them like a storm cloud. This was their last shot. Tariq had traced the syndicate's digital footprint to this warehouse, where Marcus stored encrypted backups of his deals. If they could hack the server here, they'd have the evidence to expose him and his mob allies, not just to the board, but to the world. Failure wasn't an option, not after Lena. "Server's in the back," Tariq whispered, his voice hoarse from dehydration, "but it's guarded, heavy, motion sensors, cameras, the works. My hack can get us past the first layer, but we'll need to move fast." Jade nodded, her Marine training locking her fear away. "Alex, you and Sarah take the west side, draw their attention. Tariq, you're with me. We get to that server, no matter what." Alex gripped her shoulder, his swollen eye barely open. "Don't do anything stupid, Jade. We're getting out of this together." She gave him a tight nod, but her heart wasn't so sure. She'd already lost Lena. If she lost Alex or the others, she pushed the thought down. Focus, survive, fight. They moved like ghosts, slipping through the maze of crates. The warehouse reeked of oil and metal, the hum of generators masking their steps. Alex and Sarah peeled off, setting off a distraction, a clatter of metal cans that echoed like gunfire. Shouts erupted from the guards, boots pounding toward the noise. Jade and Tariq darted forward, reaching the server room's steel door. Tariq plugged his laptop into the access panel, his fingers flying over the keys. "This is going to take a minute," he muttered, sweat beading on his brow. "The encryption's military grade." Jade stood guard, her stolen pistol gripped tight, her eyes scanning the darkness. Every creak, every shadow set her nerves on edge. She thought of Lena's daughter, waiting for a mother who'd never come home. Of Marcus, her half-brother, whose betrayal had carved a hole in her soul. She'd trusted him, believed in him, and he'd turned their shared blood into a weapon.
"Almost there," Tariq said, his voice taut. The tunnel beeped, green light flashing. "Got it." But before they could celebrate, a spotlight blazed to life, pinning them in its glare. "Drop the gun, Thompson!" a voice boomed. Jade spun, heart lurching. 6 guards fanned out, assault rifles trained on them. At their center stood Scarface, the syndicate enforcer from the stairwell, his smirk as sharp as a blade. "Thought you'd slip in here unnoticed?" he taunted, stepping closer. "Marcus called it, said you'd be too stubborn to quit. Makes my job easier." Jade's grip on her pistol tightened, but she knew the odds, 6 against 2, with Tariq barely able to stand. Her mind raced for an out, but the warehouse offered none. No cover, no escape. She glanced at Tariq, his eyes wide with fear, his laptop still tethered to the server. "Keep it running," she whispered, then raised her voice to Scarface. "You think Marcus is loyal to you. He's using you just like he used me. When he's done, you're next." Scarface laughed, cold and hollow. "Nice try, lady, but I get paid either way." A burst of gunfire from the west side cut him off. Alex and Sarah, still fighting. The guards flinched, their focus splitting. Jade seized the moment, diving behind a crate as she fired, clipping one guard on the shoulder. Tariq yanked his laptop free, scrambling for cover as bullets tore through the air. "Downloads at 80%, he shouted, ducking a hail of gunfire. Jade returned fire, her shots precise, keeping the guards pinned. Her training kept her steady, but her heart screamed for her team. She couldn't lose anyone else. The server beeped, download complete. Tariq clutched the laptop, his face pale but triumphant. "We got it, Jade! Everything!" "Move," she barks, laying down cover fire. They sprinted toward the exit, the guards closing in. A bullet grazed Jade's arm, hot pain searing through her, but she didn't stop. They burst through a side door, the cold night air hitting them like a slap. Alex and Sarah were waiting, battered but alive, their distraction buying just enough time. They piled into a stolen van, Tariq clutching the laptop like a lifeline. As Alex floored it, the warehouse shrank in the rear view, gunfire fading into the distance. Jade leaned back, blood dripping from her arm, her chest heaving. They had the evidence, Marcus's deals, the syndicate's plans, all of it. But the cost was steep, and the war wasn't over. She closed her eyes, Lena's face flashing in her mind. "This is for you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Marcus thought he'd broken her. He was wrong. The boardroom of Thompson Security, Inc. gleamed under the fluorescent lights, its polished mahogany table reflecting the Chicago skyline like a mirror. Jade Thompson stood at the threshold, her arm bandaged, her face bruised but unyielding. In her hand was Tariq's laptop, loaded with the evidence that could end Marcus Reed's reign. Across the room, Marcus sat at the head of the table, his tailored suit pristine, his smile smug. The board members flanked him, their faces a mix of unease and arrogance. They thought they'd won. They were wrong. Jade had slipped into the building through a maintenance tunnel, using every trick from her Marine days to bypass security. Alex and Sarah were outside, ready to stream the evidence to the press if things went south. This was her moment, the culmination of every fight, every loss, every scar. "You shouldn't be here, Jade," Marcus said, his voice smooth as silk but laced with venom. "You're a fugitive now. Embezzlement, breaking and entering, quite the resume." Jade stepped forward, her boots echoing in the silent room. "You're good at lies, Marcus, always were, but you forgot who built this place." She slammed the laptop onto the table, its screen flaring to life with the syndicate's contract, emails and bank transfers, proof of his betrayal. The board members shifted, murmurs rippling through them. Marcus's smile faltered, just for a second. "Fabrications," he said, leaning back. "You're desperate, Jade. Pathetic." "Desperate?" Jade's voice was a blade, sharp and steady. She hit play on a video file, a recording from the warehouse showing Scarface and his goons discussing Marcus's orders to deal with Thompson. The board's murmurs turned to gasps. One member, an older woman named Evelyn, paled as her own name appeared in an email trail linked to Marcus's payoffs. "You sold us off," Jade said, her eyes locked on Marcus. "Not just me, but every community we swore to protect. Schools, clinics, families, sold to the highest bidder. And for what? A cut from the mob?" Marcus's composure cracked, his hands gripping the table. "You don't get it, Jade. You never did. This world doesn't reward people like us unless we take it. I did what you were too weak to do." "Weak?" Jade stepped closer, her voice low but thunderous. "I built this company from nothing. I gave people like us a chance when no one else would. And you spit on that. You spit on our father's name." The room froze. Marcus's eyes widened, the truth of their shared blood hanging between them like a live wire. "You knew," he whispered, his voice raw, "and you still think you're better than me?" "I think you're a coward," Jade shot back. "Blood doesn't mean loyalty, Marcus. You proved that." He lunged, pulling a concealed pistol from his jacket. The board screamed, diving for cover. Jade was faster. Her Marine reflexes kicked in and she tackled him, wrenching the gun from his hand. They crashed to the floor, the table overturning in a splinter of wood. Marcus fought like a cornered animal, his fists wild, but Jade was precise, pinning him with a knee to his chest. "Stop!" she roared, her gun now trained on him. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of facing her half-brother, the man she'd once trusted. "It's over, Marcus. You're done." He glared up at her, his chest heaving, blood trickling from his lip. "You'll never hold this place without me," he spat. "They'll eat you alive." Jade leaned down, her voice a fierce whisper. "They can try, but I'm not you. I'm not my father's shame. I'm Jade Thompson, and I don't break." She stood, dragging Marcus to his feet as security, her security, loyal to her, burst into the room. They cuffed him, his cursings echoing as they led him away. The board members sat stunned, their empire of lies crumbling. Evelyn, the compromised board member, stood and extended a trembling hand. "Jade, I'm sorry. We were wrong." She didn't take it.
"You'll answer for your part," she said coldly. "All of you will." She turned to the laptop, ensuring the evidence was backed up to the cloud, ready for the world to see. This wasn't just about her. It was about justice, about protecting the vulnerable, about proving that power didn't have to corrupt. As Marcus was dragged out, his eyes met hers one last time, a mix of rage and something softer, regret maybe, or the ghost of what could have been. Jade turned away. She'd won, but the victory tasted bitter, stained by Lena's blood and the betrayal of family.
The morning after the boardroom showdown, Thompson Security Inc.'s headquarters buzzed with a different kind of energy. Employees gathered in the lobby, their whispers echoing off the glass walls as news crews swarmed outside, cameras flashing like vultures circling. Jade Thompson stood at the center of it all, her arms still bandaged, her face etched with exhaustion but resolute. She'd won the battle, but the war for her company's soul was just beginning. The evidence from Tarek's laptop had gone viral overnight. News outlets ran exposés on Marcus Reed's ties to the Chicago Syndicate, his forged documents, and the payoffs to board members. Hashtags like Justice for Jade and Thompson Strong trended on X, with employees and clients sharing stories of Jade's leadership, how she'd fought for underserved communities, how she'd given second chances to people the world had written off. The outcry was deafening, and the board had no choice but to act. By noon, Jade was reinstated as CEO in an emergency meeting. The compromised board members, Evelyn included, resigned, their reputations in tatters. Marcus was in custody, facing charges of fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. The syndicate's shell company was under investigation, its assets frozen. It was a clean sweep, but Jade felt no triumph. Lena's absence was a void no victory could fill. She addressed the staff in the auditorium, her voice steady despite the weight on her heart. This company was built on a promise to protect those who need it most. Marcus tried to break that promise, but he failed because of you, because you believed in what we stand for. We're not just a business, we're a lifeline. The room erupted in applause, but Jade's gaze lingered on the empty seat where Lena would have been. She'd visited Lena's daughter Mia that morning, promising to cover her education and ensure she'd never want for anything. It was the least she could do, but it didn't ease the guilt gnawing at her. After the speech, Jade met with Alex, Sarah, and Tariq in her office. They were battered but unbroken, their loyalty a tether that had kept her grounded. "You didn't have to risk everything," she told them, her voice thick. "But you did. I'll never forget that."
Alex smirked, his swollen eye finally starting to heal. "Yeah, well, you're a pain in the ass, Jade, but you're our pain in the ass." Sarah, clutching a stack of financial reports, smiled softly. "You gave me a chance when I was just a nobody. This was my way of paying it back." Tariq adjusted his glasses, his usual bravado muted. "Lena would have wanted us to finish this. For her." Jade nodded, her throat tight. She'd lost a sister in arms, but she'd gained a family stronger than blood. She turned to the window, the Chicago skyline stretching before her, a city of grit and dreams. She thought of her parents, who'd sacrificed everything for her to have a shot. Of Marcus, whose betrayal had shown her that family wasn't always born, it was chosen. Before the day ended, Jade announced reforms, a community oversight board to ensure transparency, scholarships for kids from neighborhoods like hers, and a fund for employees facing hardship. She also reached out to a young black woman in the mailroom, Tasha, who'd been unfairly demoted by Marcus. "You're getting a promotion," Jade told her, "and a seat in the leadership program. We need voices like yours." Tasha's eyes widened, tears brimming. "Thank you, Miss Thompson. I won't let you down." Jade smiled, a rare warmth breaking through her fatigue. "I know you won't. Just keep fighting." As the sun set, Jade stood alone in her office, the weight of the past weeks settling into her bones. She'd reclaimed her company, exposed the truth, and protected the vulnerable. But the cost, Lena, her trust in Marcus, and the scars on her team would never fade. Justice had been served, but it wasn't enough. It never would be. She picked up her phone, dialing a number she hadn't called in years. Her mother's sister in Detroit, the only family she had left. "Auntie," she said when the line picked up, her voice soft, "I'm coming home for a bit. I need to remember who I am." The city glittered below, a testament to her strength. Jade Thompson had won, but she knew the fight for justice, for herself, for her people, would never end.
The Chicago skyline shimmered under a blanket of stars, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat against the night. Jade Thompson stood on the rooftop of Thompson Security Inc.'s headquarters, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. The city sprawled below, a tapestry of struggle and resilience, much like her own life. A week had passed since she'd reclaimed her company, since Marcus's betrayal had been laid bare, since Lena's sacrifice had carved a permanent scar on her heart. The world had moved on, but Jade was still finding her footing. She leaned against the railing, the cool metal grounding her. The media frenzy had died down, replaced by stories of her comeback, headlines calling her a trailblazer and the unbreakable CEO. X was flooded with posts celebrating her victory, with #JusticeForJade evolving into #JadeInspires. Strangers shared photos of her speaking at community centers, her face fierce yet kind, a symbol of what was possible when you refused to bow. But out here, alone with the city, Jade didn't feel like a symbol. She felt human, bruised, weary, but alive. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from Alex. "Checked on Mia today. She's tough, like her mom. You good?" Jade's lips curved into a bittersweet smile. Mia, Lena's daughter, was starting therapy, funded by the company. Jade had set up a trust for her, ensuring she'd have a future Lena would have been proud of. It didn't erase the pain, but it was a start. She texted back, "I'm okay. Thanks for being you." The rooftop door creaked open and Sarah stepped out, her coat bundled tight against the chill. "Thought I'd find you here. You've been quiet since the speech. Everything all right?" Jade took a sip of coffee, the warmth spreading through her chest. "Just thinking about Lena, about Marcus, about everything I almost lost." Her voice was soft, carrying the weight of lessons hard learned. "I built this company to protect people, Sarah. But I didn't protect her. I didn't see Marcus for what he was." Sarah's eyes softened. "You can't carry that alone, Jade. Lena made her choice. She believed in you. And Marcus, he chose his path. You gave him a chance, more than most would have. That's not failure. That's strength." Jade glanced at her, grateful for the words, but not fully convinced. Marcus's betrayal, her half-brother's betrayal, still stung like an open wound. She'd spent years building trust, believing family could be more than blood. But Marcus had shown her the limits of that dream. Yet in the same breath, her team, Alex, Sarah, Tariq, had shown her its truth. They were her chosen family, forged in fire, stronger
than any blood tie. "I'm going back to Detroit tomorrow," Jade said, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "To see my aunt, to walk the streets I grew up on. I need to remember why I started this fight." Sarah nodded, understanding. "You're not just fighting for you, Jade. You're fighting for kids like Tasha, like Mia, like the girl you used to be. That's what makes you different." Jade's throat tightened, Sarah's words hitting a nerve. Tasha's promotion had been a small victory, but it lit a fire in her. She saw herself in Tasha's eyes, hungry, determined, ready to prove the world wrong. The reforms Jade had announced, scholarships, community oversight, employee support, were just the beginning. She wanted Thompson Security to be more than a company. She wanted it to be a movement, a beacon for those who'd been told their dreams didn't matter. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Her father at their kitchen table in Detroit, his hands rough from years at the factory, his voice steady as he told her she was tougher than the world's cruelty. "You're my hope, Jade," he'd said. She hadn't understood then, but she did now. She was his hope, her mother's hope, Lena's hope, a chain of resilience stretching across generations. "I'm not done fighting," Jade said, her voice firm, a vow to herself as much as to Sarah. "Not for Lena, not for Mia, not for any of them. This city, these people, they deserve better, and I'm going to give it to them." Sarah smiled, a quiet pride in her eyes. "I know you will. You always do." As Sarah headed back inside, Jade stayed, the city's hum filling the silence. She thought of her parents, whose sacrifices had paved her path, of Marcus, whose betrayal had taught her to choose her family wisely, of Lena, whose courage lived on in every step Jade took. She wasn't just a CEO, she was a survivor, a fighter, a daughter of Detroit who turned pain into power. Jade raised her mug to the skyline, a silent toast to the road ahead. "I'm not a victim," she whispered, her voice steady against the wind. The stars burned bright above, and for the first time in weeks, Jade felt whole.